But viewer, you are watching Xirtus.
So long as I'm in this Oval Office.
Yeah, whoop.
How's it going?
Not too bad.
We've been doing like a breathing exercise in a while. You want to do like one of those?
We'll give it people a chance to sink in. Yeah. Oh, and I just heard an echo of your voice in my ear. So
that's definitely you because I muted myself and only blame you.
Stream playing. So this is technically we are live, ladies and gentlemen. If you have any questions pressing, please leave them in the chat here. Maybe use this time as we take a few breaths to clear your mind and just see what's fresh. What
David's upset that we used the wrong intro for this. I just use whatever intro feels right. I almost wanted to use the Saturday intro. I just never use it. Yesterday was Saturday, and I was like, I should do the show, but then we couldn't. So I figured Sunday I should do a Saturday, but we didn't.
Well, things are in disrupt. There's going to be an eclipse tomorrow that goes over the United States. So this is my unofficial kippah. I'm going to cover my head as we take
over the United States and over the heads of many of us. Yes.
The goal while you take these breaths is to kind of experience the world vertically up and down through your spine, and as opposed to moving forward in time. So, we're going to take a total of 3 breaths and then maybe just roll out the shoulders afterwards. But if you want to shrug the shoulders as we inhale and then exhale, kind of pinch your shoulder blades back and roll them down, that is one motion you can add to it here. And
dude, look how much I can do this. This is crazy.
I mean, you sit on cross-legged on the ground for your streams. PewDiePie would be proud. Floor gang was like a major era for him.
Oh yeah, floor gang is key.
When he stacked up all those tambourines, yeah.
Brahmin.
But, I can't even sit cross-legged at all. I mean, I need like pillows under my knees, and
you gotta start them young. You gotta get these kids crossing their legs young. Gotta be able to, like, you gotta do the whole thing.
Well, in other mammals, when there's a lot of like limiting of the family tree, they get hip dysplasia, and so actually, I don't think that's really what's wrong with my hips, but I'm not going to talk about what Bertolletti syndrome is
before the breathing exercise. Best yoga session ever.
It would be great if we keep everyone waiting and we just keep doing this kind of like
until the breathing exercise at the very end. Yeah.
And so I guess, right, we are online right now. We are streaming. We are live. But the goal right now is to take the mind offline a little bit and go inside. I know that when my internet connection goes a little rough, YouTube pulls up a little icon and it says, try again, you're offline. And I go, no, you're offline. I'm fine. I'm right here. What do you mean offline? So again, what does it mean to be connected to source? And hopefully the illusion of the Wi-Fi signal being connection to source, even if sometimes I listen to that source hours and hours every day.
On a little clip-on bow tie. Look at that. Sweet. It's like,
and be thankful, I guess, for the freedom through that Wi-Fi signal. We used to be limited to consuming the books that were in the library that were available to us, and even then they'd keep track of who read what. So
based.
These 3 breaths will start with an exhale in order to clear the lungs. And so instead of like getting a half breath on the first, so
ruining that breath. Yeah, no.
All right, so when you're ready, just start to kind of empty, and not like wheeze exhale, but empty, 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 and then in through the nose as you grow taller. And shrug the shoulders for 3, 2, and then exhale through the mouth. Take any extra motions that feel good. Inhale for 3, 2, 1, and exhale. Make sure you push out all the air, and then one more big inhale through the nose. Slightly tuck the chin to grow taller through the top of the head, and then even sigh. Let it go. That's one where when you do that exhaling and you ask people to sigh through the mouth, depending on where you are and how experienced the people are or open they are to it. Some people just give a weird look to the one guy who actually listens to the teacher and sighs. But when you have a whole room full of people doing it and you do it multiple times, it's like you can hear how much sexual tension there is in the room and how much like how much channeled energy there is. That it's like because even myself, if you can like almost hear the tension in your voice. If you're really tense, making a sigh that sounds relaxed to your own ear, let alone to someone else. So as a way of like a self check-in, not quite a cognitive test, but. And remember, the next time your computer tells you that you're offline, point back again. We have to teach the AI. It's an iterative process. It's working with larger and larger data sets, and so your computer does notice when your blood pressure goes up, and when your heart starts to beat a little faster, and when you press the keys a little harder because you're frustrated or angry, or and also all the computers, they keep track of when people chuck them across the room. And they just get frustrated. Is it because of something they were reading or writing, or was it because of the spinny wheel came up for the umpteenth time? Or no, I don't know. But so, how did those breaths work out for you, Andreas?
That's the way I keep always wondering, like, why people don't breathe more. Some people will tell you, like, as a joke, they're like, breathe, but like people don't breathe. I feel like 99% of people don't know how to breathe at all.
Well, we instinctually as children view that like when you take a big breath, your belly goes out. When in reality, the diaphragm needs to constrict. You've seen that demonstration with the balloons in a glass jar. The diaphragm actually pulls down the lungs to open them. And so opening your chest, and it's the lower ribs. If you stick out the lower ribs too, it's like a cheerleader, like gymnastics pose, like you landed it. But there's good posture where regardless of what the shoulders are doing, you kind of lift through the heart and you keep a little bit of tension on the front side to keep the lower ribs knitted. And then when you breathe in, you picture your heart moving forward, maybe even making space in the upper lungs and the top and back of the shoulders there. But, and then as you exhale, is a time when, relax forward.
I never learned to breathe like that man so hectic blocks.
That's good.
Yeah, big things are happening though. You could like take Sunday stream to gloat a little bit.
What sucks is like someone else would look at this and say, "How rude! Andreas isn't able to respond," and I'm like responding.
millennial that this is a real song from the night. You could tell me that was a real song.
You'd believe that. You could tell most 15-year-olds and they would just be like, okay, they wouldn't care. They just accept things as truth. They're like, who cares if it's truth? What is truth?
The 80s were like 100 years ago anyways, and so that's open source anyways. No? Well, so here's a question. When you were on with Gunwoo and Julia, and she said out loud, she goes, man, I wish what you just said to Gunwoo, and you weren't on the screen. Sometimes you were kind of doing what Rafi does as the producer sometimes.
I was trying. I love that role. I really wish I could do that more.
Well, you're refining it. On one hand, the shtick is to be the host who's doing that all. And then it's almost like being Bo Burnham on stage and controlling all the lights. And then you're not getting nearly enough credit for being just a talking head and being quick and witty, and let alone booking your own show. And that's separate. And so on one hand, you could sell your services as an AI show producer where you're giving people more interesting visual cuts in and out. But so she said out loud, man, Gunwoo, I wish I had what you just said in a rap song. And then within 5 seconds, I measured it out. Within 5 seconds, there was a rap song going, G, W, and you like cut it off. And I wonder what it, you didn't train it necessarily to grab that, right?
Yeah. I really like this one because it goes, they call him Gun Wow, because I figure like the ladies do call him that.
Wow. Why is it always so cold in March? What they manipulating the weather because the Air Force retired.
West Coast.
Is this going to be like an Alf, like best of special episode?
That wasn't on the same album as California Love. No, that's
I have one for you actually. Earlier, I was talking to Olivia Rondo, and I was like, you know what?
Okay, go ahead. But here's the point I'm making. Finish your Olivia Rondo is what?
It's all right. I'll get back to her.
Is she an artist or what?
Yeah, she's on Fox. You know, she's like a young conservative, but I don't know if that's what you call Olivia. She's been on a couple of times.
She's been on this. Yes. Okay.
And she's on TV like all the time, like on like normal conservative TV. But she's like a normal like, you know, she's like, this is Olivia, you know, Olivia.
Yeah.
You've seen Olivia Rondo on like Fox. She's on like Fox, bro.
Well, and that's kind of the difference is either self-production, and then you're the one adding layers to either. And as soon as you're adding another person to the mix, especially in states where if you hire an employee, they have to have healthcare, it's a much bigger decision than just trying to kind of show what you can do on YouTube.
She's like a Fox talking head.
Yeah.
Which is pretty great. Because like all these old conservatives are like watching it, and then this like young black woman's who smokes weed is like explaining to them like her conservative values. I think this is the best thing that could happen to Fox. So but
but here's the thing is
you had a point.
There are certain streaming platforms, I don't know if you've seen this, where if the person gives a thumbs up, all of a sudden like confetti flies out. And if you do like double hands,
claims the Gun Wow championship. Yes, #1 Gun Wow supporter, the first person to come up with the Gun Wowzer title. We call the fans the Gun Wowzers, actually, or the Gun Wooed. I don't know. She's been Gun Wooed. Keep going. Sorry.
No, there was there were the Jake Paulers. That was kind of one of the first big ERS on the end. And then his mom was Pam, and they called them.
Yeah,
Pam.
Brittany's right. She's a wrestler. That's the way to refer to Olivia. She's a wrestler. I'm just going to keep doing this. I'm the worst.
But his mom, again, she had this thing called Pamsters, and Camsters is kind of an illicit model camera thing. And, all of Jake's fans that couldn't get through to him would message his mom through social media being like, oh, maybe we can have dinner. No. But what I really want to know is, Andreas, instead of, and maybe the audience too would know about this, again, because have you seen where there are hand gestures you can make on stream? I'm
proud of how knowledgeable this audience is. Yes.
Automated confetti comes down as a premise for.
Oh man, I got in trouble one time for throwing automated confetti. One time I had this teaching English class, and they had all the teachers were going to come in and bring in something that showed who they were. You know what I mean? Like a little something from home or something like that. I guess they meant like, this is my turtle. But like I came in and just went like, whoa, and threw glitter everywhere.
In person is different.
That was the first time I ever realistically people hate cleaning up glitter, but glitter's good.
You see how the idea of Julia asking, and she didn't say Siri, but maybe there's, instead of the word Siri, if one of the people on stream says the words "I wish," that, and then it knows to listen, and if it can fulfill that order, it'll do it. And so my theory is you were in the background testing an AI, and it gave you like a red light, and you like pushed the button, and because you let it play. You didn't automate it where it did it automatically, but or alternatively, it was just you who was quick on the draw and heard the guests say, "Wouldn't it be cool if there were music?"
I do my best. Earlier, this one was good.
You could be my Robin Quivers. The way you laugh just gives me shivers. Yeah, I could be a Howard Stern. I could be my Robin. I could be a Howard Stern. I could be my Robin Quivers.
There's something there. There's something there for sure. I feel like there's that. Go down that path.
Alex Stein was complaining that this chick he was telling her she was going to be his Robin Quivers, and then now he talks about her like a stalker. So I don't know. It's not very nice.
Wait, who talks about her like that? What? I missed that. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. I could send the link to Aiden. Where is he at? He might be around. He's always interesting. I'm wondering how you guys would interact. Have you guys interacted yet?
Oh yeah, not as much as actually. He goes, "Are you going to be on stream or something?" And I think it's nice that you keep it exclusive, and it makes it.
Oh wait, you introduce me to him?
I mean,
you did, didn't you? I'm the worst friend. I am the worst.
No,
ladies and gentlemen, the person who introduced me, it wasn't even through Alex Stein.
He's so polite that he's all polite. Done would be interrupt him and talk over him.
What I love is how neurodivergent people are impolite, and then you can see how they try to be polite, and then eventually they learn to love each other within the boundaries and constraints of their humanity.
He looks like someone made an AI morph of my face with my father's face. And so like, I don't look that much like my dad, but like a little bit. But again, it's like, if there was something in between Aiden, there's just something about the structure in his face. I wonder what, if we have similar.
He reminds me of this Dutch dude I know. He looks super Dutch to me, you know?
So you remember the bits
I'm annoyed right now. I'm just going to like vent. I wanted to vent for a second on my package problem.
Sure.
So that's a funny sentence. But Amazon's supposed to send me a package. It says it's arrived. It's not there. I go look and I realize it's not there. I go to like tell Amazon, hey, you know where to put the package. You're a corporation. You're not some government bureaucratic organization that doesn't know what they're doing, right? And I find out that I can't do anything because it was sent by them through USPS, United States Postal Service, instead of the Amazon shipping thing, which now I have to wait like till tomorrow, like midnight, I guess, or something like that, to say, hey, you know what, don't do that ever again, and like fix it. And maybe they'll fix it because it's corporate. But like, dude, corporatism overstates.
Was it a Prime purchase or was it a regular purchase?
I don't know.
Well, because when I check out,
I give my dad a replacement Roku because
gives me the option to like
get
it all on. There's something called Amazon Day or something, and then
have you ever seen anyone like use a Roku controller until it dies like in a day? Like, how do you drain 2 AAA batteries in a single day? I'm going to get him a USB lithium chargeable Roku remote because of just like, is this possible? Or is it like corrosion on, because it's an old Roku? Like, so that's why I just got him a new one. But these are my problems right now. This is what I'm thinking about. You know?
Well, think about it. I watched the Game Boy movie. A lot went into putting those devices in our hands. And yeah, I mean, batteries were expensive. Remote control cars. Yeah, all that stuff. There was a sunken cost. And not only did like your parents have to have money or, you know, to buy the gift, but then you have to have the batteries, even the little handheld games. And there wasn't a crank. There was no system where the kids could unfurl a bunch of ropes and like play tug of war and spin something to like charge the battery for 15 minutes of game time. You know, that would. I wonder, as far as like a Boy Scout project, once they start doing technology and stuff, instead of building robots necessarily, they could just build little dynamos that would facilitate certain things. I mean, most devices, there doesn't seem to be one that's maximized for battery life. Because in reality, even my laptop, and I'm saying this because I have 3 laptops that are broken. So if we're going to vent about technology problems, that it's just, I've kept them. And for whatever reason, 2 of them actually aren't cracked. It's just the backlight went out. But why is it that I can't tell my computer, your screen's off right now, but I still want to use you? And you have a microphone. And you have an operating system.
What's the deal with these laptop monitors? They don't monitor nothing.
This is real because again, this is called pretend you're blind for like 5 minutes. Okay,
who's designing these sensors? It doesn't.
Yeah, okay, fine. And like take it out of the realm of like this sarcastic tone of like Jewish.
No. Actually, that's how I feel.
In reality, you we are all temporarily enabled, and if we live long enough, our eyes will degenerate. And by then, do you think it's not that we're not capable of doing these things? We need to lock 3 people at Google and Apple in a room with a computer and blindfold them for 3 days. And
you
then
mean like jail? Yeah, we should start sending people from Apple and Google jail. I agree.
Open their email. I understand like these programs exist kind of, and if you train with them. Now imagine that you don't read or write, nor does anyone else near you read or write. So like, let's say you're like coming across the border and you're given like a tablet, like a nice big color one. How can you interact it to gain language skills, to gain hand signal? And then even if you can't look at it, you should still just be able to, even with 1 or 2 buttons, figure out how to interact with the computer system such that it's useful. At least says, do you want to listen to the radio?
It's so scary though, because it's like on one hand, it's getting to the point where it's easier and easier to do things, but therefore people are moving further and further away from understanding these things, So
in architecture, it's called universal design versus handicapped compliant design. And there's certain situations where there's a bare minimum standard that you have to force people to do. But if you just design certain things well enough, in theory, it's
I've been way too excited about Roblox. I wanted to talk about that for a second. I mean, and here's why. Let me explain. There's 2 reasons why. Like, one, kids play Minecraft and like most played games. Okay, so let's just talk about like what people are spending their time doing. Let's start with that. Games versus movies market. You can see that video games are triple or quadruple the size of the movie market. Okay, 300 billion versus like the 180. So it's
this is 2020. So are they
not counting all of gambling and every other
up or down though? So
it's definitely going up. And what's happening is game companies are galvanizing, they're swallowing each other, and you're getting these AAA games that nobody gives a fuck about, but then you're also getting these casino gambling addiction games because they know that people love that, and they're putting that into Ubisoft, they're putting that into pay to win and all that stuff, and so people are they hate it. And then there's these like indie games, and indie games are growing, but really there's a couple kinds of games that are bigger than all kinds of games, because those are the games that the younger kids play, right? A lot of 35-year-olds are playing games now, but 5-year-old.
What about the
Minecraft
75 to 95-year-old market?
I wanted to make a
you
game.
And I are going to be in that market
right now. It's about a divorcee whose wife is left him after their daughter Jennifer just died, and he's on a beach walking, and he hasn't been to that beach since Jennifer and him were there, and he's remembering her, and it's the first time he's been alone. He's felt alone for years, but now he's truly alone, and he comes across a whale, like a beached whale, and the whole game is just him trying to bring water to this whale and push the whale and trying to think about all the things he knows to save the whale. Like, he can't roll the whale over because
there's not that many choices, but you're clicking through it.
Totally, so like a Mac game.
Okay, so instead of a book, I was bringing that.
And then you like right when you think the whale's gonna die, and he like says goodbye to the whale, and a wave comes up. You know what I mean? It'll be great.
Well, and so it's not even really a choose your own adventure. It's a way to immerse yourself in a video game, and then because the intimidation factor for a non-gamer like myself is that I'm not going to be good at the game, or it's going to make me nauseous, but what you're talking about is more like Myst and Riven.
Oh god, these are the things I love. I can't help it. I was like, and everyone's like, wait, really?
I'm more likely to put on a helmet if it's like, here's 15 minutes of a 4-hour game. I think Rick and Morty's graphics got worked into something where the playthrough is just bizarre, and it is a little bit more first person, but if you dumb it down even more, again, for that older demographic or the younger demographic, they understand that there's a story being told and you're paging forward or you're tabbing through it, and it doesn't even really have to make sense. There's a guy on a beach that meets a whale, and you're trying to actually like not put weird double entendre meaning into anything. And then you're giving people the chance though to relive or to access certain emotional experiences, because the storyline can be kind of heavy, and it's a guy's talking to the whale about what happened to him in his life, and
I feel you, Blake. I feel you. How are they gonna? I mean, I feel like these kids don't even, these millennials, do they even know what these words mean anymore? Here's a song I was working on for my new game. This is like the kind of music I actually like.
Well, one of my favorite games on the computer. It wasn't on. I guess it was the one friend who didn't have a game system, and he is now currently has been working for Citizen for a while, but he was doing a lot of creative stop motion animation stuff, and then he went more corporate permalancing, doing internal presentation of information and really dynamic animations and that sort of thing. And then he was getting into 3D modeling, but the favorite game was just basically a low resolution set of characters that you could choose from, and then you could type in lines, and then you would hit play, and it would act it out. And so you and your friends it's like Mad Libs, but instead of just filling in one word, we would sit there and it's like farts taste like straw. You just like type in a bunch of things, and then the novelty was you could make it say semi-obscene things, and then you hit play, and it would
People love that.
And I think it was like
these are the most popular games that are being played right now. Okay. And so almost always Minecraft has been for years like the #1 game, because Minecraft is a game where you're creative, right? It's a game where you make stuff and people love to be creative, and you can always come back to it.
Is it okay? Well, so I don't necessarily know that, but that is part of it, is that
that's a big reason. So let's look at Minecraft gameplay for a second, and then you can look at wow, they have a walkthrough for survival mode. People love the survival mode too, but once you've played survival mode, the thing is, like, you want to build, this is an inventory system game. You collect voxels, which are these cubes of different asset qualities. Some of them are wood, some of them are metal. Then you can make stone into axes, and you can have a better tool, and you can, digging with your hand isn't very good. You make like a tool to mine, and eventually people build freaking castles. Okay, so that's Minecraft. Minecraft creative castle, a city. There's someone just recently made an entire city in Minecraft. Like, so people get really obsessed with building.
You earn the things to build by basically digging through the ground, and like one out of every 100 blocks.
When you break a bunch of blocks, you get to keep the blocks, and then you can use those blocks. And now there are a bunch of people that have made like Minecraft clones, which are really interesting, like, because you can like open source add there's a thing to take actually designs, and you can maybe make a castle based on a golden ratio pattern, say I want all of these blocks to be in this order, and then make a procedural castle or something like that. And so people are really interested in that, because right now you have everywhere you go in Minecraft is procedurally generated. It creates this mountainous world that has water voxels and stone voxels and wood voxels and ice voxels, but you could arrange those yourself. So that's one of the reasons why people love Minecraft. Okay. But the other game people love, and let's do this in a more logical way, like 35-year-olds will love to play Counter-Strike, because it's a game where you run around and shoot at each other. People love that. Counter-Strike is a game where people shoot at each other. And this is I find interesting that the Olympics has video games now, but they don't have any first-person shooters, which are the #1. And I'm not a big fan even of first-person shooters, but they're the #1 kind of 3D game that's played, right? These are the most popular games, arguably, by adults, and many people in general are just first-person shooters.
Well, you know what basketball players who shoot from long distance in the game do for 4 hours before the game is warm up every single day. Right. And so my father was telling me that when video games first came out with that 3-dimensional interface, the older generation was going, no one's ever really going to be able to master that interface. And even in N64 playing Bond, that was kind of that first widely played jump off the top level, rotate and shoot at the same time, and because if you could have a robot and have an interface with it that was a high-speed connection, would a human actually be able to pilot a thing, was the question. And the answer is clearly yes. Some people are, it's like God level of their ability to use their thumbs in these minute ways to control many axes of rotation and movement, planes of movement, and train a weapon on something at the same time manually, let alone automatically.
Well, so the thing is interesting to me that the Olympics would ban, so there are rifles in hunting, essentially, not hunting, but riflemen aiming in the Olympics. And there are video games in the Olympics. There's chess and bridge in the Olympics. There's no first-person shooting, and first-person shooting games are not violent, right? First-person shooting games are simulations where you're using a robot and you're going through robot bodies.
Yeah, but
realistically, the Olympics someone should make a game for the Olympics about robots. You have 100 robot bodies, and you hack into the body, and this is all rifleman stuff, and it's all Olympic themed, right? Because now, they need a first-person shooter for the Olympics.
But add the word special.
All right, we'll throw some helmets in there as a DLC.
It's like, again,
you can unlock for money.
The people that are mentally equipped and capable, again, they're trying to figure out how to use their skills to make money. And there is a lot of money in grants and stuff if you're going to devote your project to help bridge the gap between the people who have limited vision, who have limited mobility. Because, right, maybe there is a certain type of game or headset that would be better for people that are paralyzed or
I just saw something on that too. Hold on. I invent new controller ball wheel. Where's that guy's thing? Oh man, where's this guy? This guy just invented a new kind of controller. I
mean, I think is his name Elon, and it was a guy playing chess. Is that no? The controller was in his brain, right?
Controller. I invented. How do I find this thing, man?
So while you're looking, can I?
Yeah, go for it.
The kind of info dump, because it'd be interesting. I like how, in certain situations, the proper thing to do is, oh wow, that's a good idea. I'm listening to you, and I'm going to repeat back the idea to you to show, as opposed to just make the next point.
Dude,
but when you're brainstorming,
look at this freaking thing this guy made. Yeah, this is brilliant, actually. I think this controller is out of control. And I'm not
this is recorded, so if we want to go back through this and like mine it for ideas, yeah, we can.
So if you look at like average click-through rates on a regular controller, like with your toggle wheels, it's not as good as a mouse. A mouse is always better, right? But what's better than a mouse, arguably, can be a scroll ball. The magic ball mouse is really convenient to work with. It's not as perfect for a first-person shooter, but it's just about as good, and it's definitely better than your toggle.
Okay, well, now I heard Adam Krigler kind of boast that he was master of ceremonies to some extent, because he had this ball mouse that had like 17 buttons on it. And
yeah, ball mouses are really great, and they feel good in your hand. Like I like working to it though. I like working on if I'm designing something or something, like if I'm using a mouse all day, I'd much rather use a ball mouse. That's what I used as a child, and like a lot of like Silicon Valley professionals in the early 90s, late 80s used the ball mouse. It's pretty sweet. I think it's an underrated thing. So this guy built this controller.
They made balls out of ivory, Andreas, and it wasn't sustainable. And I know everyone, they like the feeling. And
actually, I do have those Chinese medicine balls that jingle. And I think you could probably get away with that. Point is, I think people ought to change controllers. They should be making newer, cooler things, but what I like is that I can use a mouse on my PlayStation. I didn't know I could do that. And I just got a mouse, and it just changed my life. Like I never had a mouse before. I haven't had a mouse in so many years, like 20 years. And then I just got a real mouse, and I just thought, okay, like, cause you can't on Windows do anything without a mouse. Like I have trackpads and things like that.
So my parents had the Atari when I was growing up. So that was just a joystick you could use for one that had a button on top and a button on the base, and then there was also a dial, like a rotary dial.
This is my Mac setup. So on a Mac, what I use, this is like a guitar. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's like a keyboard. I've got my trackpad here, and I can just swing it around. I find that to be very practical. Multi-magic trackpad. Trackpad's perfect for Mac. It's not perfect for Windows. Sad. You can't adapt it. You think you would be able to.
But these streaming platforms, they give you different, on the back end, you can maybe add layers or features, but there's no physical object that you sell with them. And if there was a streaming platform that had its own branded, you can obviously then reprogram that mouse to do, but they're saying that this is the ideal interface and no one else really makes it.
Dude. Well, I mean, the PlayStation controller just became de facto, and Xbox's controller is a Japanese version of the PlayStation controller, which is sad because the Xbox controller was a ripoff of the Dreamcast controller at first. And I like the Dreamcast controller.
Let's follow the lineage. Let's follow. You had Atari with a joystick and the dial, and then you.
You know what? NES.
NES.
As you said that, we need to talk about the first banned video game.
Sega was pretty next level because it had 3 buttons, and then some controllers, the turbo controller, had 6
We're
buttons.
going, you want to
And
go
then you
back?
went to
We have to go back.
N64.
We need to go back 20
And you're
years
stuck
further.
N64.
We're not
and
starting in 1980. I'm sorry. We're
I'm
starting
saying
in
if you wanna
19.
hit
We're
young
starting in
demo,
1968. We're
and then
starting with the first
75 to
ever.
85.
Dude, this is Maze for the PDS 1D. This was the first banned first-person shooter, banned in '68.
It was probably done
Dwarf-
with DOS commands or what?
Dude, this is way before discrete dirty operating system exists. Hey, Aiden. Hey, girl.
Yeah, how's it going?
We're just talking about the first ever banned video game, which DARPA Defense banned in 1968. This is the MIT version of Maze, and MLAC PDS 1D game.
Looks like Wolfenstein.
Exactly. This is where they, eventually.
But Aiden, I'm trying to pitch him a game that was based on the AI art you made, and well, we weren't going to play it if you weren't on stream. And I don't know.
Not beautiful,
maybe
though?
since
This
you
is
shut up,
beautiful.
he'll let me get a word in edge. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh,
I'm
I
totally
might.
kidding. Totally kidding. But so, Aiden, you remember the skit that you made where they were in some sort of diner or ice cream parlor? And you gave them dialogue, and you did the voiceover, and you made their mouths move, right? And it wasn't meant to be you pretending that actor said something. And there's a certain honesty in the artwork where when it's comically, even though that was kind of just the best solution you came up with, and it was still pretty smooth. It wasn't glitching or there weren't gaps. But so I was telling Andreas, my friend, that actually he had a summer internship where he was putting cartoon mouths on things. And so what he learned to do is take the whole phonetic alphabet and figure out what shape the mouths made. And when you had different characters with different shaped mouths. And so then he came up with essentially with an algorithm that he would do by hand to go insert all of these, and even made stop motion videos where he had cutouts of all the mouths and he would stick them on something and get them in sequence. But our favorite game was, you know what Mad Libs are, right? Yeah. What? Mad Libs?
Yeah.
So the premise, those were always kind of funny and goofy because if you insert a silly word in there, games aren't just for adults, and anymore. No, I'm just kidding. But so our favorite game was you come up with a few lines of dialogue, and the computer had these little avatars, or maybe 10 to choose from. They looked like characters from Rocko's Modern Life, essentially. And we would just get a hoot out of it. We were in 6th, 7th grade, and we would type silly things that didn't even make sense, and we would see the characters acted out. And so the modern version of that is just having the interface be something, and it's even funnier for a child, just the novelty of it, in terms of them interacting with it more than once and having the novelty not wearing off. Because anytime you bring in a new friend, they're going to laugh at how silly the mouths look moving, and the fact that you're putting words into it. On one hand, it's their voices, or on one hand, you could have as well AI voice generation. And so it's a pretty simple game, but I think that
the Mad Libs version of that.
Well, so Mad Libs, you're just inserting one word and trying to extrapolate on that. And how do you age up? You know the concept of aging something up.
So that's why I was getting to my point. So that's why people got sick and tired of Counter-Strike, and kids like these games like The Sims, right? Because The Sims is a Mad Lib. You can put different kinds of people together in different kinds of houses that have different kinds of items,
and you make them do things, and then it's
funny
funny to watch them act out the scenarios.
It's a dollhouse. It's amazing. And then there's like a thing like Sims Basement, drugs. There's like a drugs mod, basement drugs mod.
Well, I think what you're saying is that
then you can make your Sims crackheads or meth addicts, and they can be addicted. I don't know if you should even look at the basement drugs.
Are you trying to say that the game that I'm describing falls short of that, and therefore?
Well, no. So the other cool thing about games is they have mods. Okay, so one of the reasons that games are continued to be played after the first 6 hours of the game coming out is that people can add to the game, change the game. And that's one of the reasons why people are trying to make money off that. They're like, oh, now you can buy an outfit. Well, screw that. I can put my own outfit in. I just put it in an override folder. And now when I start up the game, my character's naked or is, wearing a pink bunny suit, which I prefer. I made all of the Chewbacca's Care Bears in Star Wars. I love it. They're pink and blue and teal, and they're just happy. And the Ewoks are, it's perfect. This is what I'm saying.
You both have heard of Leisure Suit Larry, please?
Oh, God. I love Leisure Suit Larry.
But Aiden, though, no?
I may have to see them.
So the history of it, it's very brief, is that when video games first came out, there's a version of this game, Leisure Suit Larry, that was released in Germany.
It was the
And
kids' version of Seymour Butts, basically.
Well, but like the kids in America played the game with the same goofy character, and there was like 1 or 2 scenes where you could like unlock something and a girl's tits would pop out on, you know.
I wish I hadn't played this game in
you know?
retrospect because
I don't know if
I hadn't played Leisure Suit Larry, I'd be a different person. I honestly think like Leisure Suit Larry, if I hadn't played, I probably would have been a better person. But like I saw really early on, like you got to be careful about. But then it also probably saved my life because I knew how to make sure I wasn't like beaten in an alley.
And so when we're giving out the interface prompt base for visual, and Aiden I think is aware of the problems with this in terms of people jailbreaking it. And then it's not that it falls into the wrong hands for criminal uses or nefarious purposes. That is also a reason that it's important to figure this out. But if you want to give kids the opportunity to play with an AI system like that, then you give them a walled garden. And so, yes, it only has 8 limited scenarios, and maybe you can so there's the diner, they could have the conversation there. Maybe there's a forest, because if the kids
you
are
remember
smart
Magna
enough
Cum
at age
Laude
14
for Dreamcast
to figure out the whole thing, then they're not in a walled garden, and then they're going to be typing things in that, right, obviously could lead to characters undressing on screen, whether or not you programmed it to do that, correct? So
Magna Cum Laude's an underrated game. I feel like this game is actually pretty clever too. This is, you know, people who really ought to give Leisure Suit Larry more credence. You know what I mean? Like,
I'd say that's a pretty big. I'm circling this on my list. That's a pretty sound lot, because my brother took the same pitch around for over a year to all these fancy parties in New York City, where when you get there, they take your coat and get a drink. And this is when he was in college and kind of talking his way into a university after failing out of a few other ones. But he just said $1 million for 1% of my idea. And, you know, people would listen to him talk, okay, well, we want to contribute. Like, how can we get you started? And he said, no, we're not. What I'm doing is I'm waiting until someone gives me $1 million for 1% of this idea. And eventually he did find that person. It took some time. But
so like, this is why
practiced an elevator pitch and schmoozing.
This is why
this one's real simple.
Grand Theft Auto is dropping on the list to 9. Grand Theft Auto used to be a really fun game, right? Everyone loves, you've heard it. People love Grand Theft Auto. People love taking and having and using things in a virtual world, right? So why is it dropping? Well, because you don't need to go through all that work anymore if you get Roblox. Roblox is the game that the kids are playing now.
They're still not using AI, though.
No, hear me out. Generative AI on Roblox. If I go in here and I say add an exponential rain tween with the time of 1, add a linear, or if I say Roblox AI write a game, now there's a thing called the Roblox game editor. You know what I mean? So what you do is you literally can say like make a world, make a platformer where if I fall off the platforms, I die. And it will write that code. So kids can say what kind of game they want. Like make a game that's like tic-tac-toe, but I have to jump from square to square. Or make a game where if someone hits me, I lose health and I have 100 health. And you lose 5 to 10, you know, roll 20. Make a D&D style roguelike game.
Any of these games like involve talking to other humans.
And
like
that's the thing. That's also why Roblox is so huge.
Giggling and like
it's online. These kids are interacting with each other,
being groomed to be a game.
Kids meet each other, and then these kids build not just a level, they build a world with cars they can race around and coins they can jump on, and they talk to each other in their little worlds. Generative AI, this is the future. This is not just the future. This is what kids are doing right now. They're making their own game.
Funny.
That's why it's number one.
Back in the day, like I did not know that this existed like in early 2008 too. That there were like Roblox games, or people were making Roblox games too. It was like very weird community.
A computer within a computer. Okay, and that is some next level shit.
And if I say like I can take like a block, a cube, and I say make this cube like a spaceship, and it'll reshape it into a spaceship for you. And then textures, make this texture golden or make this texture wooden, and it'll make a texture for your gun or your icon. Make my guy look like a Lego character. Like the amount of intelligence that they've programmed into this is stunning. Like it's able to that these kids. This is a game made by like.
Never asked, do you like your outfit? Tell yourself you're beautiful. You know.
I think it's pretty impressive. But the thing is, okay, so Roblox, that's game number 2.
Does it remind you to call your mother?
What's game number 1? Fortnite. Why is Fortnite number 1? Well, because
Fortnite change it up.
Fortnite is all of it at once. I hate to say it, Fortnite is every game at once. It has every possible thing in every possible way. There's a reason why Fortnite's the number one game in the world.
The aspect of Fortnite where you literally throw up the universe around you and you build platforms to run on, it's another level of coordination. So we were discussing the fact that, you know, in the early James Bond N64, you're jumping off a level, rotating, and, you know, firing a weapon. And so but this brings that component of first-person shooter, full dynamics, and other, you know, you can fly out, but then you're also mastering another set of buttons that's throwing up this universe around you, which makes it wizard level status. And this is
why Fortnite is going to be. This is why Fortnite is beating everything else.
A lot of people can sing, but not a lot of people can sing and dance.
A kid can program into this thing. They can download a map. They can download any map they want. And in the old days, like a couple years ago, if I wanted a different kind of game, I'd have to buy a new game. Now I can just either program it myself with AI or download a YouTube template someone made and add it to my game, and my game will just change because it's a physics engine. So I can go from running to jumping to being on a plane to being in a car. You just download some cars, throw it in there, download some robot suits. So
when you're trying to game an algorithm to get to the top, you look for the underused search terms where people are. It's like you've heard of that SEO strategy where you go for the terms that are farther down on the ranking list, but there's fewer people competing for them. So
it's crazy that's built for 10-year-olds, right? This is kid picks to make game engines. This is amazing.
If for very highly functioning 10-year-olds, yes.
Okay. Well, yes, kids that haven't been.
Here's my interaction with gaming is there was
not in Flint, Michigan, and you have access to bottled water, then you should be able to do this.
Trivia. You Don't Know Jack was a game that was very popular when I was growing up, and there was a bald-headed guy, and there were only so many questions, and so it was like a game of Trivial Pursuit, where if you've played it enough, you kind of know, you know, you can flip through the back, answer the cards, and there's like a fixed amount of data in there, and it never migrated. You Don't Know Jack, I don't think, into the modern era where you could choose from other, you know, niche pop culture things and have that be the content of the trivia. And now there actually is a British guy who has a ball. He looks exactly like You Don't Know Jack, and he has all these. It's like 7 channels, and he must talk for 6 hours a day into a microphone or have a generative AI that mimics what he does. And but the idea is that could be the source content, and then all the trivia. That's where I found out about If Day was from this guy actually. But you could source that. So instead of using Wikipedia as the source that they're using the trivia from, you could choose this person's intellectual property, which is a set of. But so
that's like a Dungeons and Dragons game, or what they like to call a roguelike game. Roguelike games are, you know, everyone likes to argue over what a roguelike game is, but I like to say it's a game like Rogue, which is the first roguelike game. It's very recursive logic here. This is a game from UCSC, University of California, Santa Cruz, made 1979, 1980. And a lot of cool games are based on this, including Baldur's Gate. And all the newest games that are the highest of graphics are based on this game mechanic, right? Which is that you can roll for 20 and, you know, initiative, and you might get 1, you might get 20, you might, you know, whatever the power of your hit is based on that random roll. And you can make choices, you can interact with characters, and, you know, you can dig essentially. So if everything's all blacked out, then you dig a path until you end up in one of these rooms.
Dig Dug was a fun game.
That room could be replaced with a big realistic cave like in Minecraft. The point of the game is the mechanics, and I think this is the thing that's lost right now is most games aren't mechanics based. There's like all the good mechanic based games are like tiny little 2D platformer scrollers, and then these big multi-$100 million games, they're not games, they're physics engines or propaganda. Like sometimes it's a story about a black girl who's, you know, made it in, you know, the Japanese magic world. That's Forspoken. I love that game, by the way. But most of the time, it's not even propaganda anymore.
Do you remember the
physics engine? You're like, what am I going to do in this? I'm going to like.
There's something that keys into that. So Sonic the Hedgehog, there would be these bonus games, and if you got a certain amount of coins and then went into a secret chamber in certain levels, there'd be a big floating coin, and you would jump through it, and it would bring you to. So instead of this side scrolling, which, you know, Sega, you know, Sonic. So do you guys remember either of the? Neither of you are probably old enough, but there were 2 main bonus games that were very 3-dimensional and very dynamic and
yes, required the coin running game.
There was the coin running where you're in a tube and you had to memorize this whole sequence and just barely tap the controller to get. And then there was also one that put you on, I think it was in Sonic 2, that put you on a sphere, and there was a series of either blue or red dots, and your goal was to never touch one of the red dots, and you had to time it perfectly because you could only move on this rectilinear path. And so I think that what you're talking about, Andreas, in terms of you're muted, Andreas.
It's okay. I was just complaining. I feel bad for Sonic Frontiers. Like, nobody likes this, do they? I wanted to like it because the idea
type in Sonic 2 bonus level or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel really bad for Sonic Frontiers because it deserved better. Bonus.
Again, what we're doing is we've almost come up with
bit.
5 games right now that are like low hanging fruit in terms of hitting an existing market that.
Of course, yeah, this is great. I just saw this guy's video. 100 devs.
There's a different one, but so as far as
100 devs make a game without programming. This video changed my week. I mean, so basically they just pass around some code to each other, like, and without telling them what the code is. So this guy picks up the code and he's like, okay, it looks like there's this little world here. So then he'll like add some characters to replace the blocks, and he just, then he hands it off to the next guy. The next guy adds some like sprites, hand magic, and he's like, okay, let's make a little menu for it. And then they do some cell shading, and then the next guy gets it, and he's like, you know what this game could use? It could use like grass, and then like, how about we add like
a heart? You've heard of an exquisite corpse before?
Someone hated the grass, they changed it to ice. Someone hated the ice, they changed it back to grass. Someone changed the mountain, so they made a dungeon. And this just 100 days later.
So this is exactly what you're talking about, Andre. So in Aiden, have you heard of an exquisite corpse? It's a game where you pass around a story that way, and someone writes a line of dialogue, or you're doing it with a drawing and you fold the paper. So this is a version. You're taking a concept that has existed.
Saying, "Oh my God, my idea is the best." Like,
I want that though. I want an exquisite corpse game. This is the perfect idea. I can't believe that they did this.
Game of yes and.
They're not even done with it yet. Some dudes are making sound effects. They're adding levels to it. It's just getting weirder and weirder.
You see how it took
the magic toilet in the game now.
And so if they're trying to explain to people how to interact with they know what an exquisite corpse is.
Look at the graphics now. So, it's gotten so good. And this is just, and this is after like each one gets like 2 to 6 hours or something like that. I forget what it is to like fool around with it for a little while and move it on.
The best games, as you pointed out with Rogue, though, it doesn't need to be in a 3-dimensional universe. So have you the game Bubble Bobble?
Bubble Bobble. That sounds like a phone game.
It was on NES. So there's 2 games. Both Sonic work like this, and Bubble Bobble. So this is a demographic now, and I'm going to see if you guys agree that this is a demographic. And to try to get you to agree, I'll talk about these 2 games. Is that there's the older sibling who is competent, who's getting a new game, and then the younger sibling who's there who doesn't quite know how to play the video game. Can like.
But they're enthusiastic.
Yes, and so as the younger sibling, what the older sibling used to do is hand you the controller, and even if you knew you weren't doing something, and the older sibling would really make sure to, because at first I was fooled, and he would like, oh yeah, you're helping, even though I was not pushing the buttons. But then eventually, it's just like, let's monkey see, monkey do. As a young child, I was probably 6 or 7, hopping side to side, but so in the game Sonic in particular, and this is the second minute because Bubble Bobble came first. But there was Tails, and Tails had this special feature where he could fly. And when he flew in as Sonic, you could jump and grab his hands, and he could lift you up. And there was like 2 or 3 places in the game where you actually needed to be dexterous enough to use 2 controllers at the same time to kind of access a certain shortcut or, bonus level or something. Or that was the one time as the little sibling, it's like, all right, bro, no. For real this time, I need your help. Like, see, Tails can fly and he catches Sonic, and now like you'll sit around and watch your older sibling play like 8 hours of this game and not get into any trouble because you're waiting to feel useful. And then it gives you the faith to play on your own when your older brother is not there. And so Sonic with Bubble Bobble was this game where it was you against the world, and you're this little character and you blow bubbles, and then you have to catch it. And again, it's not even in a Pac-Man torus. It's just in a 2-dimensional grid, and each level, there's 99 levels, so there's a lot of playthrough for an old game, and each one had a different pattern, and different animals would come out, and then there were by the time you got to some of the main bosses at the end, though, it really helped to have 2 people going. In this game, you could press a button and give a life to the extra player.
That's big now. Still, they
It's
like
you're
in
getting
the Shredder's
trusted.
Revenge, the Ninja Turtles game.
Like the older brother has 3 lives left. Is he better off trying to beat the main guys on his own, or does he tag in little bro?
What I love about
with
this
the-
is it's
and then
usually the
you're,
other
like,
way
onward.
around.
You're like,
It's
"Oh my
usually the
God."
10-year-old who has to rush over and give me an extra life. You know what I mean?
And then you're pulling together because again, America structured its education system and social exposure system in the 70s during the Cold War around individuated activities. And in Russia, the toys they gave them, they had to use together in order to use them properly. And I'm not saying that capitalism or socialism is either of those are perfect solutions, or that they're that's even part of the discussion when you're talking about childhood education. And I think it's unfortunate that the conversation about childhood education development got muddied. The waters got muddied by this idea of, are they working together? And in reality, a well-rounded child will have activities they can play on their own and other activities that encourage them and almost necessitate the ability to negotiate relationships with other people, potentially, even if that's an AI person.
That'd be cool. Yeah, you should have an AI companion, or maybe you play as the companion. There's a lot of games recently where second-player shooters, where you're like helping the first-person shooter. You have to constantly like bring them like ammunition and things like that. I think those are kind of funny.
And I tell my brother about that. I had conversations about this because he has kids that are 10, and he tries to limit their screen time. Or, but I'm saying that for me, like there was a level in Mega Man where there were in order to get through, there were a bunch of eggs, and you had to shoot. And it was usually when you were shooting, it was draining your power. But this is you could shoot them with a thing that you had unlimited power for, and so you learned to jump and time, and negotiate different physical spaces with your fingers, and it was like building up the dexterity and hand-eye coordination that is required for some of these other games. That again, I'm sure it does come naturally to some people. I'm sure it is something that is you don't have to teach it, but finding games that hit the part of the market.
It's kind of annoying that some games I get
gamers.
motion sickness and I like want to make games, but like I can't. I'm just
And so
like,
he
is
tells-
anybody else who says that they can't stand in a video game?
My mom's like
Well,
that.
I like that. You say you want to make, because when I tell my brother about this, he says, I just got an emulator. So like if I want to be nostalgic about Bubble Bobble, I'll just go play Bubble Bobble.
Well, yeah, there's
how do you
reasons
bring
like,
it-
okay, so I've got like emulators, dude, and I just got a bunch of new Raspberry Pis and Pi 5s and things, so I'm gonna start working on that. But have you played Spelunky Classic or Spelunky? Spelunky's kind of like Bubble Bobble, but it's fully generative. So every time you play, the level builds a new level.
Well, so should we ask the chat? The chat, would you help support the efforts of Xirtus doing some sort of game, Kickstarter, GoFundMe? Because on one hand, you can do it from a nonprofit, and if you do it with the idea that these games are going to be, how do you make a computer game for someone who can't see? No,
that's easy actually. All these MUDs, so again, those text-based games are perfect because they ask you questions and you respond with prompts, right? So like actually ChatGPT RP role-playing with you is amazing if you're blind. Like you can say, hey, set up a role-playing game, and it'll talk, and then you can respond and answer, and it'll change the dungeon master stuff.
I think there will be eventually something like you remember was it Legend of Zelda? What was great about Legend of Zelda back in like Nintendo's time was that it was like immersive storytelling, but it was a hard game.
Yeah.
And now
have you played Dwarf Fortress?
You can just look it up on YouTube. But if you had generative AI telling, creating the game or
right
the things, or creating like kind of variations of different hints or something like that,
because Zelda had passwords that you had to like write down to remember stages. That was the way it worked. Like you'd remember
Mega Man 2, yeah, where you could.
But have you played?
If you didn't have infinite continues or whatever.
Have you played or have you heard of Dwarf Fortress?
See, that's the thing is some of the allure of some of the games is that you always had to start at the beginning, and just because it's okay,
I'm gonna start at the middle. I'm gonna start at the middle with Dwarf Fortress because it's funnier that way. Dwarf Fortress is a game I heard about because cats were dying of alcohol poisoning in the game. I think I mentioned this before, but I find the story fascinating, and this kind of goes to what Aiden's talking about. this is an amazing, intricate game. And right now we're not looking at the game. Actually, let me show you Dwarf Fortress normal. What do you call it? Like text. This is what it looks like. It looks like just text code, but you can put on whatever visual you want because the game is just the mechanics, right? So you could run those mechanics through the Unreal Engine, or you could run it, with just like replacing the green with like some background imagery. So that's what people do. They'll replace the little ASCII smiley head or dragon with pictures of actual dragons, right? This is people will mod it to look like a normal game, okay? But the point is, the way it works is
celebrity faces on there.
Yeah, like so right now, like you can have. I'll go back a page earlier. Like here's like making it look like a normal game. See, now you've replaced all those pixels and numbers, but they don't make this. Like hundreds of different people make their own versions of ways to play the game on top of it. The game itself is just the mechanics, and the way it works is that you generate this huge world that's so big that like even on a big computer running like a 480, it takes a while to create and craft this giant world, because this world's also deep because you're mining, you're dwarf. You have to go.
Are you alone in this world?
There's thousands of other dwarves, and the way it works is that there's two brothers who made this game. The first brother is like autistic and writes stories about dwarves. The other brother with him analyzed the stories he writes for game mechanics. So like, well, what made it possible for this story to happen? Well, the dwarves they can socialize, and they can drink, and they can mine, and then they can build up assets, and they can buy and sell things. And so then what they do is they program all those into a game, and then they have these stories play out with AI characters, and they see if the game with those mechanics they added produces similar enough stories to the story he just told.
Nice.
And if it works, they're like, oh yeah, we gave all these characters all of the capacities necessary to live out your dream. And then there's just an AI world that's happening, and it's all text-based, right? However, things happen that you don't expect, like because dwarves can drink when they go to taverns, and if they leave the tavern, they often spill. And if they spill, there's alcohol on the floor. And cats in the game, well, they like to lick themselves.
This is such a you're stating this like it's lore, and once you're familiar with the game, you know it. But how is the person coming across this information?
So again, like either you're reading it on a screen, or you're hearing it because you're blind, or you're seeing it in that like beautiful like visual. It doesn't really matter how you see it.
What you're saying is that
here's a picture of a cat, right? So this cat now walks into a zone that was potential. This potential zone is a drinking quarter.
I'm not your anger translator, but like let me try to like see is what you're trying to point out, because you're pointing out these things that the interface for the game is not compelling because it's a photorealistic game. And it's not dynamic three-dimensionally. What's interesting about the game and what keeps people playing is that it pushes you forward in its narrative.
So much. Well, it's because they put so much effort into game mechanics. They put zero effort into visuals. So the visuals are done by other people. People love the game so much that hundreds of different groups have made visuals that are different kinds of visuals. Like maybe I want to have the game look like this. Maybe I want to have it look 3D. Maybe I want to have it look like whatever.
Is the name of the game or what?
The game is called Dwarf Fortress.
Okay. So the premise, it's not like it's called Life Simulator and somehow you end up in this weird niche. Okay, so it's Dwarf Fortress, and the idea is how do you?
Yeah, and so basically the game looks like this. It's hard to even see normally. These little, I don't know if you can see this. These are smiley faces here. This yellow little smiley face. That's a dwarf. You see this one? That's another dwarf. You see this H? I think that's a cat. This is like the Matrix, right? Blonde, redhead, blue eyes, whatever the heck. But you can trade that for images, and now you've got a picture of a dwarf and a picture of another dwarf, and you got a bed where the bed is, and whatever. So you can make it look like whatever you want. The point is, what's interesting is this cat got drunk and died because the potential for cats to lick their paws and cats to accumulate whatever they're walking on, and cats walking in bars, and then the cats ending up having not the capacity to drink that much alcohol, dying of alcohol poisoning. Nobody meant to program that into the game. But those are the mechanisms that made it possible. What
needs to be there at the end is that every
dwarf, Sean has joined us.
The dwarves that live over 70 years old. And what's up, Sean?
What's going on?
We're just talking about Dwarf Fortress and the idea of the game.
lack of
Can you
conservation
pass
of
a
matter
law?
or the alcohol. Yeah.
But can you pass a
I
law
remember
that,
that.
all the tax rates go up by like 40% and all that money goes to caring for elderly people? Like, can you do that in the simulation just to see what would happen?
That's kind of the point.
Isn't
Is
that
that
pretty
you
much
can
Social
you
Security?
not the cats, but the dwarfs.
Well,
Like you
but
can
then
definitely
there's
set
the
up. You can
threat is the
definitely
rug
set up
pull.
the. You can definitely
It's not
set
the
up a
lockbox.
government. You
Do
can
you
definitely
have Al Gore's lockbox? I don't have it.
You could definitely set up a government in Dwarf Fortress where you own your own kingdom, and then if you die, someone else will come across your kingdom because like these worlds build on top of each other. So like that's often the thing is it's world building like a rogue, but more importantly, the game mechanics constantly make potential for things to happen. So you're like, oh wow, I didn't know cats could get drunk, but also it could be like, I didn't know this could fly. You know, whatever it is, I didn't know that you could.
But can you like
build an
teach
automated
kids about
drilling
what happens
machine?
when there's like one woman that sleeps with all the guys in the neighborhood and then they get angry and it's like people fight and
I'm sure you can. So the game is not made by
They'll
like
probably write a myth about
capitalists. So yeah,
that.
So
they'll probably write a myth about it, and then they'll tell that story to their children for like generations.
Sean, you
That's
seem
what
like
happens
someone
in that
who
game.
cares about fitness, right? And I don't know if you have younger family members, without being too specific, that maybe you're like almost worried about they play games too much, but what we really need, what I'm trying to say is that if there was a device that you could build into the game that in order to earn a token, you had to do like 5 push-ups or pull-ups or use free weights that are either linked to the system to know if they're moving, or you have some sort of Xbox Connect, and they built into the game. It's just instead of 4 hours of playthrough being 4 hours of sitting, it's like 3 hours and 30 minutes of sitting and just like little, like,
yeah,
put
but
your
that
hands
doesn't
over
build
your
a
head
habit.
5 times. You just
the only way to really build a habit of doing push-ups is to literally do the push-ups because you don't want to do push-ups.
When you're talking
Like,
about
you think to
long-term
yourself,
thinking,
I really
you're
don't
doing
feel like
short-term
doing 10
intervention.
push-ups right now. That's the reason you do the 10 push-ups, because you don't feel like doing them. And the more you do that, the further ahead you'll get than otherwise.
It's like, for me, my theory about yoga is that, as soon as you think you're good at yoga, that's when you try too hard or something new and you get hurt. And it's like staying within yourself. It's like, no, I suck at yoga. I suck at, but when you walk around telling yourself you suck at yoga all the time, right? No, but that means you have to kind of go
Hatha or vinyasa?
I prefer hatha when I'm getting back into my practice, just because I'm synchronized yoga dancing, as I refer to it, with vinyasa. But
I like to do the vinyasa, but it's funny because I weigh more than the typical student of the class is like a woman. And they can hold the poses for 30 seconds to a minute, no problem. Do the downward dog into the upward dog and back over and over again. And I sit there like grunting and shaking and sweating, and they're having absolutely no problem doing it because their bodies don't consume oxygen.
Well, also what it is there's a certain amount of flexibility, and you're using your strength to hold you up. And there's a certain way that when you get to poses, but yeah, no, I try to teach in a way that gives people permission to put their knees down, because otherwise people end up struggling through it and kind of ending up in a slightly off posture because they're, instead of taking a break every 5 seconds. And on one hand, the teacher isn't telling you to do it. On the other hand, you don't want to stand out. But when it comes to like chair pose and squats, the girls can hit the chair pose for like 45 seconds. But I say it's because they're having a halfway practice their whole life, and they're in the bar stool. They're not in the chair. And so my students, I like coach them right from the beginning, people that have never done yoga, and then they're getting like into a squat where it looks like they're in a chair, but the chair's not there. And that's protecting your knees, your weight back. But as soon as you, like everyone else that goes to yoga, you just do yoga. You don't really learn yoga. But when students come to me and they're like, no, just help me with some of the fundamentals. And then they say when they go to other yoga studios, people always ask them about their chair pose. They're like, how do you do that? I can't even sit back that far, because once the body's kind of learned a bad habit.
Yeah, like you got to really learn to open your hip flexors to get that pose deep. And some people are just never going to be able to do it because their anatomy just won't allow for it. So it's like, it's okay to do a 45 degrees above parallel in the chair pose. That's fine.
And there's no like central rule book or playbook, but the schools, just like martial arts, they're kind of dogmatic and rigid. And there's a certain lineage and tradition. In Massachusetts, there's a place called Kripalu, and they actually had so many knee surgeons come out to them and say, look, people are this one pose where you're telling them to put their heel down.
Is the warrior pose?
And,
Warrior 2?
Yeah, warrior 1.
Is that the one with the leg extended?
So warrior 2 is with the arms out and back. You're kind of in a lunge.
Did you
warrior
see that?
You turn your foot out. But in Warrior 1, you're supposed to keep your hips facing forward and your leg.
Yes. This is
they
exactly the
decided,
one
though,
where I
that-
almost tore my knee up doing. Yeah,
Okay,
I know exactly.
And some people, literally, the front side of their ankle, the bones are structured in such a way where that ankle's not going to go down, not because of not any flexibility anywhere. It's because there's a literal, unless they shave those bones down, that's just not. So,
I have an even worse
came out and
problem.
said,
In
like,
my right ankle,
we're
I've
changing.
got some hardware installed, and my ankle just won't do certain poses, but I just work around that.
Oh.
But it was actually my left leg. I was in that pose where you're down, you've got the one leg under you and the one leg out in front, and your heel is on the ground. And I thought I was good at yoga that day, and I just slipped. And when I slipped, I felt the pull in the back of my knee. I'm like, if you go a centimeter more, it's gonna fucking tear. And I put my hands down and I like shifted myself back into a stable position. I'm like, all right, let me sit this one out for at least the next couple of minutes.
Has anyone on the stream pulled a hamstring before?
Never, thank God.
So you've seen it on sports where they come up lame and they just grab the back of their leg, and then sometimes they're out months, and you're going, "What do you mean?" So I've done it twice, and one was re-injuring the first. So I was playing softball, reliving my glory days. This wasn't when I pulled my Achilles tendon or snapped it, needed surgery playing basketball. But no,
this is why I don't play sports.
I know. Well, softball on a rainy day, and I was wearing cleats because I thought it was cool, and I was crossing home plate, and my heel hit the plate, and it's like a cheap little league field, so I slid across, and that was the first thing that just hyperextended it. And I work on my hamstring flexibility, but
I mean, it only goes so far, man.
And so the back of my leg turned dark purple, which had happened to my ankle a few times. You slide into home plate, and the catcher blocks it with theirs, and you just mash your ankle, and so there's like drained blood that takes like 2 weeks to go away, and that's just like that's not evil need. But the whole back of my thigh turned this purple color. I'm going, well, I didn't know that could happen. And then as soon as you think it's healed, I went and played again, and in the field it was again another wet day, just another slip. But
like, I'll never stop feeling my ankle, but I've learned to deal with it. But
playing sports growing up, these guys got to be tough. They got to go out there, and otherwise, I think I got like a decent medical education by following the Red Sox, and the press corps did such a good job announcing specifically what was going on when it was going on and how it got fixed, and these new innovative procedures. And
they got all sorts of crazy shit they don't really talk about in the news because they're not allowed to. But have
you heard of the hook and loop surgery that's within the last 10 years? So there's this there's something in high ankle sprains.
Where they like reattach a tendon to a bone that's like snapped clean off
preemptively. It's almost like Tommy John, but they're literally putting a screw in through your ankle and like attach. And so I think it comes from livestock, and there's certain kind of livestock that tend to get Achilles, like back of the leg injuries. And so the farmers have learned to do this little surgical procedure, and it's like, but so now they're doing it to football players, and
that's fucking wild.
Quite the competitive advantage, and it's one thing to not be a professional, you're eligible for the draft, but if your medical chart shows that you have this, it means you're much less likely to sustain a high ankle injury, which is one of the few things that really can keep a quarterback out for a while.
Sounds like it, yeah.
So did you guys
people sometimes ask me what I'm training for when I'm like, doing like martial arts training or like just weightlifting or yoga, and I'm just like, I'm not training for anything. I just enjoy the training. Like, there's nothing outside of this. It's not about the destination, man. It's about the journey.
There you go. Aiden, what were you gonna say? Do you do yoga? No?
Oh, I was just going to say, I thought it was interesting is that they are having an Olympics in Australia that is drugs, everything's allowed. Like any type
powerlifting,
body modification is allowed. And they're having it, and they have a good excuse of it too, is that the Olympics as it is now, they don't pay their athletes at all. All the money that goes into it, especially from different countries, which comes into it like billions of dollars, goes into these very absurd testing procedures or jacked up testing procedures to see if there's any anabolic steroids.
Like Conor McGregor is a fighter who has a titanium rod where his shin used to be because in a fight it snapped. And the question is it really? They'll let Conor fight because it's Conor, but in reality, if someone had titanium forearms and titanium shins and like didn't literally brass knuckles, because it is possible to replace bones with.
Does that cut the amount of oxygen you can carry though? Because like there's supposed to be marrow there.
No, there's a valid point, but you could with Blood Boys, right? No,
But I mean,
there's also
blades
EPO
for arms.
So now, as far as like Xirtus and the AI sphere, fighting has used a new type of AI to try to count the number of blows and to figure out the momentum of the fight. And what they don't say, and it's someone trying to sell a big multi-million-dollar system. They actually weren't able to sell it to Dana.
Fighting.
I think it's
like
Jake
it's obvious who
Paul's
wins. It's obvious who fucking wins. It's obvious.
Yeah,
who
no, but
loses.
so here's
They
the
don't
safety
engage each
factor.
other,
What
then
if
it's
what if
obvious
the
too.
computer? Because every now and then the referee doesn't hop in time. So what if the referee's there with a buzzer and he hops in when he needs to, or when because again someone's sustained enough damage, or because again if it was
all right,
actually
if the damage counts were popping off of them like Final Fantasy style, like when they take the damage, it like flies out of the impact site. Maybe that would be cool.
And right, the way that hockey like followed the puck with the flare, maybe
Yeah,
again
it's like
because that's
this can like charge up when they're doing good.
Some other professional league did buy the system. Here in Boston, one of my good friends that actually went to MIT and was on their basketball team is for a company that does these technology solutions for sports, and they're always kind of trying to reinvent the way. I like that though. The idea is a fight more exciting to watch if literally there's like a theoretical hit bar that's tied to something almost, right? Even just
like,
as a fake stat in the corner, we'll just put it there. All these other
have an HP
stats.
bar, yeah. And then
And
like,
like
when
it's
that's empty, it's over.
Cardio, so it's going. There's like different factors.
This way, they don't have to pummel each other's brains in. They can just finish it when the set number of hits landed are in.
You think it's possible to, because they say that your computer can hear your heartbeat and it knows like how fast it's like a real subtle within a certain frequency or something. And so I wonder if they can even figure out how much effort a fighter's putting in base, and claim there's a live readout of their
that would be wild, like Mortal Kombat style, where you could see through them when the hits really land.
What? And so there was another. So gaming. I don't know. Did you? Can't tell how old you are, Sean. The beard. Again, you could be like. You could tell me 24, or you could tell me like 42.
Thank you.
So maybe you're a young man that holds yourself with.
He makes a good use of his time making Sonic games. He's pretty good. I keep thinking we need to make a game that's like a Sonic game, but we replaced Sonic with a kid who has ADD. Is all, and you just have to. And the gold rings are just Adderall.
But see, Andreas, you're forgetting about Candy Crush. And Candy Crush being this massive success of people like Kim Kardashian to make millions of dollars with little mobile games. Okay, so I like how we're throwing all this stuff against the wall, and I don't mean what I'm trying to say is that the games that we're going to be able to execute as low hanging fruit, because again, all these things should be put on there, and there's the way that it's almost like a sabermetrics where you give everything a score between 20 and 80 in different categories. And one of those things is how much would it of time and energy and money to make this thing? And then what is the potential payoff? And so if you're going to go compete with something like Fortnite at the top, yeah, now you're talking about all hands on deck and you're trying to get people behind it, momentum, because no matter how good the game is, it won't go anywhere unless you have that. But I'm saying, I think just by talking about it over the past, 45 minutes, an hour, we've identified, and again, I don't know if you guys agree with what I was saying about, having a 2-player game at least.
It Takes Two is a good game. Have you played It Takes Two, where you have like 2 players that have to like one is the man and one is the woman in a divorcee relationship. This daughter prayed that they would get back together, and then the parents get possessed by these freaking dolls that they're inside of because of this evil little girl who doesn't want.
You guys ever play Tekken Tag?
But basically, the father can like shoot, and the honey and the mother can shoot fire or something like that. So like you can put honey on something, you can light it on fire, but like you can only ever play half the game because the other character has to play the other half of the game because there's no way to do both roles because one character can do things the other character cannot, and vice versa.
But you can't hop in and out of the roles.
You play as a girl or you play as the husband and the wife.
Here's the premise.
You have to play 2-player, and it has to be the husband and the wife, and you play as one or the other.
How is it going to stop you from being at the keyboard when you it says okay, other players step in?
Oh yeah, you could do that, I guess.
Okay.
It requires simultaneous.
So like a game of chess. That was one of the first remote.
But you have to play. But you'd have to switch.
I
you
like
still
this
have to have
idea. The premise though that it's not like an accountability buddy, but it's like a way to check in with a friend. You know, people have Snapchat streaks, especially if it's only like a 1-minute version of the level, and it's like a fun game that you're all playing, or even if it's just a little motorcycle and it's like. Any game like that is more fun and more compelling to me as a non-gamer if there's another person that I'm like, well, I can't play.
This is why
like maybe you go in and you like
on MMOs, all the people
of like pinging all your friends, and then
EverQuest kind of in all these games it said, okay, well, you're gonna have a world that you go into and I can interact with someone else. That was always people love that, but that's why Roblox works, because they're building a world you can build inside of.
People will play chess against themselves. They'll play it against the computer.
I think arcade games are the best
to have
to
a
target.
2-player game.
Arcade games are more fun, and people love them like artistically.
They're inherently addictive quarter pumpers.
But nobody's putting quarters into things anymore, unless you're doing like a mobile app game. It's like gambling.
And the morals of that, I don't know. It's like kids with
a short game loop that people can get addicted to.
And it's grandma. Yeah, oh man,
strip chess. That's what you got to do.
No. You can't
virtual strip chess campaign.
You can't just put titties on something and make it cool. That's not how this works. You
don't tell me how to live my life.
Really cool, and then put titties on it. Like Bayonetta is cool without the titties, right? But then you put titties on it, so then it's like that's awesome. But if you have like
a real thing, there's a lot of these really amazing BattleBot games.
If you try to have a girl in a bikini hand you a new flavor of energy drink, you might try it, but you're not going to be impressed.
Probably won't.
And again, it is all hypothetical, as Andreas is saying. But I actually do have a friend who had a grandparent who, like, was addicted to Candy Crush and was always texting everyone in her life, being like, "Yo, send me $5." And like
Farmville.
For a while, the family thought she was like didn't have food money. It's like she had a budget for everything, but she would just constantly be fiending to play this fucking game. And on one hand, she wasn't going to the casino or like, trying to sell her body to go play blackjack. Or
it pushed crime down because it was being taken up in areas with high crime and people were just busy with that rather than other things.
Yeah. Addiction. I mean, this is the problem, is the game market, the most money that they're finding is in whales, people that are highly addicted personalities. They're going to put a bunch of money into things like Candy Crush. That is the
in the interface now. Again, they're like melting forward into their bad posture as they like wither. So imagine you were sending your parents to like an old folks facility, or there was some sort of, if they had a room that had not the sphere that size of some, but like some sort of planetarium thing where there's fractals playing always, and there's people in there doing yoga or breathing, and like there's just like, and you either have that as part of your life that you're experiencing, or you live in these like rectilinear cubes, and they put these glasses on your 80-year-old parent, and they try to convince you that they're having a good experience because twice a day you put the helmet on them, as opposed to going into a room that has a higher ceiling. And then again, it's like that novel, like, whoa, I remember once when I did acid and saw things like colors and shapes like this with that. But if there was like old people, they're either staring at the wall or staring at the news or like Jeopardy. And Jeopardy's like decent, at least they're activating their mind. It's trivia. They're trying to keep track of information, see what they know. But those type of experiences should be in like not only preschools, or like elementary schools, where there's this immersive environment where you're not in charge of anything. Maybe there are types of games you could play in there if you get individual access or otherwise, but it's really just like,
what if we give the retirees a bunch of LSD?
Well, and again, some people do retire and do that, and they figure, if they die like at 75 instead of 80, at least they were like fucking awesome from 70 to 75, because a lot of people didn't plan on, like, they were hippies. So my parents in particular come right from that generation where they
that wasn't
made
the
it through the
boomers,
60s and early. What's up?
It wasn't the boomers. The boomers were like 10 in the 60s at the oldest. The generation before them was the hippies.
Well, my parents waited until they were they born in 49 and 50. So so they were they had tickets to Woodstock, but the same guy that was like 5 hours late to their wedding, and it was like notoriously late. It was like the first thing you would tell people about this guy. He's great, he's wonderful, he's actually a doctor, and but he's late to everything. So you have to tell him to come 2 days early, and people thought you were joking. But he would be on the phone and insist that he was leaving the house for days. He would walk around and talk with you. But so he had tickets to Woodstock and didn't go because he was waiting for his friend to come pick him up and go. And then they mailed the tickets back for the refund. I'm going, they would have been worth more as
Yeah, damn straight. My mother told me that she had tickets to Elvis for the New York show, and like they got the news that he died like a few days before he was supposed to play, they were like, "No, he can't be dead. We have fucking tickets, son of a bitch." Brooklyn, and she said she wished she would have fucking kept them because even in the 90s and the early 2000s, she probably could have sold them for a couple of $100 or a couple of $1,000 uncanceled Elvis tickets from the 70s. Holy shit! From the week he fucking died.
There's more to the story on how he died.
Well, it was the problem with someone flushed the toilet, because if you like what's called distend, no, it's called prolapse.
I mean, that would have been worth something too,
right? Because if you
like
find someone
who died with a Kundalini manual,
like
and he was a yogi, and he had just gotten his his DEA badge from Nixon. He was a super agent. There's a lot more to Elvis.
What happens when you die? I think everyone's familiar with that one thing that happens when you die. Don't you think that he died in the most convenient place possible?
Yeah, there's that.
The problem is, my understanding is that
I think he just did a lot of coke and then had a heart attack.
Well, hold on.
That sounds about right.
He was doing exercise, breathing exercise. He was doing Kundalini exercises, right?
Shit, and your intestines fell out of your asshole. Okay. You might have a heart attack. Yes,
general convention type things.
And then if the person that found you flushed the toilet, and then which severed that, and then you kind of were definitely going to bleed out. There's like a 5% chance that Elvis would have. With Jimi Hendrix, the joke is like, if the bitch had just made him sleep on his side, there was at least a 50-50 chance he wouldn't have choked on his own vomit. But with Elvis, again, my understanding is that is, and it's like people don't talk about it with that specificity because it's the king, and like he went out on his throne, I guess.
Well, like he had prolapsing, and then also all this.
Wait,
that's also a type of mob hit.
Like a fan
when you decide to like turn in all your friends, and one of them's a plumber, and new toilets are designed so you can't really do it, but if you're sitting on a toilet and people know when you're in there, and maybe then there's like a roto-rooter comes up out of the other end and like mixes up your insides and then leaves. So
if I was being paid to kill Elvis, right, in a hypothetical situation, I would never do that to anybody.
Right. Well, again, unless
that's not the fucking way I would do it.
What if they killed and ate your children in front of you? Then like maybe I guess that would be acceptable. But like, I mean,
that's
and
like
even then,
I would Batman villain shit, dude.
Yeah. Those are the ones you don't hear about, the urban myths that
But like, not for nothing, like if
they
Elvis
used to scare people in New York that rats would jump out of the toilet and jump up your asshole and burrow into your body. That was another one.
I just heard about a guy who got like severely cut from a rat that like jumped up through his toilet. Be careful with that shit.
And there was also the rumor that people were doing it as like a weird. People were calling it a gay fetish thing where they would use gerbils and have them crawl up your ass, but.
Wasn't there an episode of South Park about that?
I mean, the thing is, when I was like 12, I heard that because it was like in the news, and somehow I remember like it's something about them being at gas stations.
That's something one guy did somewhere once, and then some 12-year-old heard about it and then told all his friends, and they all wrote jokes about it. And then 12-year-olds ever since have been joking about it because schools always have a progression.
Remember the movie Little Big League, where the little kid gets his arm in a cast, and then all of a sudden he can throw 100 miles an hour? It's like
wow, that is a memory I didn't even know I had. Yes.
Okay, so now here's whatever age you were when you saw that movie. What does he say when the first time the doctor takes his arm out of the cast and he does this with it? You remember?
Holy shit! I don't know.
He says, "Funky butt loving." Okay. And so you had 12-year-olds everywhere not really having any context for understanding what that was, as like instead of saying like motherfucker, they were walking around, and only again at a later date did I realize all things into a child movie. It's like this is whatever he says right here. He could have said yabba dabba doo, and kids were, but maybe that was just in Massachusetts. They may have had different releases. I wonder if they translated that into like Arabic when they sent it over there. You know, it's like their wholesome baseball movie. Yeah.
Wow, yeah, that must have been like there must be some fucking weird things that they had to translate from the 80s and 90s into other languages. God forbid the French probably had a fucking field day with that shit.
Now what they're doing is right. It's like certain flags get changed on outfits and certain
what
was it? Not Air Force. Top Gun. Top Gun. There was one scene that when they released it in China, the patch on the back, instead of having like a Taiwan flag, had a China flag.
Oh, just
wow.
Talking about anal prolapsing, I forgot to mention that.
You wouldn't want to leave.
I did do a AI
Yeah.
video on that with Richard Gere.
What?
I did a Richard Gere AI video on his.
I think there was some sort of. Oh, and maybe it did happen to him. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to mention I did that just because I saw the comments.
Well, someone was saying that the kids that grew up in the era of clear backpacks, and because that was it was like whether it was school shootings, there's something called your prison wallet, Sean, Aiden. You know what the prison wallet is?
I think I have an idea.
I learned about this from a movie that came out. It was like a joke a guy made, but like he's like your pockets are empty. Where are you holding that thing? He goes, it's in my prison wallet.
I think South Park did an episode about that too.
And so kids are, in the effort of trying to get something out, or that's stuck, or because they're too embarrassed, or they don't know who to help, or they go.
You know what? This actually ties the whole thing together for me, and I wasn't really vibing on that conversation until I saw this. Now,
did everyone see the Howie Mandel meme that went around though? He like accidentally posted something to Instagram or Twitter for 5 seconds and deleted it, and it was a picture of someone who had just lost most of their intestines out their backside.
Oh God! Oh, was it the guy lifting weight?
Well, it's like gay sex isn't evil, but like you're more likely to have that complication. There's other complications with vaginal cells, like pregnancy, and but let alone like
I saw a picture from a guy who was just squatting a very heavy barbell, and turns out his intestines fell out his asshole from that.
Yeah, they can come out a hernia out of your belly button.
Be careful.
Well, and it's like if there's a fire, you stop, drop, and roll. If someone might have a neck injury, you immobilize them and you stabilize them before you move them. But like,
you don't fucking.
Could have been a follow-up PSA. It's
somebody qualified moves them.
Well, I feel bad because today's general conference, and the Mormons are talking about a lot of other things besides prolapse buttholes, and
they are talking about prolapse buttholes, right?
I feel like whatever they miss, we will make sure that they get covered.
So you remember the Simpsons? It totally left turn. Simpsons would do like one-off episodes where they would do a 3D episode, or they would do something like with a theme. I think you should do
3D anal prolapse
to hire Andreas as like the team leader, or be on the kind of like a executive visual production to do an AI Simpsons episode where the whole thing was like frame rated and like scanner darkly, but like tripping out balls and just telling a totally normal story, but making it look like you're on like a heroic dose of something, where the whole time it's morphing and there's like a few jokes that are worked into the thing. And because there's so many episodes right now, it's not as though it's like, oh, there's only 10 or 12 seasons of The Simpsons, and so adding another one that's not like canon and those guys are looking to, I'm sure, branch out.
I think there's like 30-something seasons of The Simpsons. I haven't checked in like 20 years though.
See, did you see the transhumanist guy that Andreas brought on, and how much
34 seasons of Simpsons is crazy, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of subsidies from East Asia that produce it because it like requires so many.
You got to remember the transhumanists are pushing AI, and they're going to put money behind positive portrayal of AI, so that people aren't afraid of it, because people that are 90 could benefit from better AI. And right now we can't talk to our computers.
Well, that should be easy
on
to
your
remember.
computer
There's as many
screen was
Simpsons
broken.
episodes as there
Could
are.
you get it to play you the audio track of a podcast you wanted to listen to?
Get what to do that?
If
What?
let's say your screen on your phone or your computer was broken.
Oh
Before
yeah, I can do that. I'm really good with
let's
audio
say
stuff.
like the battery's old on it and you just don't want to turn on the screen. You open your computer and press a button.
Okay, Bixby.
It says,
Open Xirtus on YouTube.
or like even write a Word
Hey,
document.
Bixby.
Can you open up a text file and type these
Open
words and then edit it?
Xirtus on YouTube.
And you're only activating a very small part of the hard drive. You're saving the battery, but this is for convenience. Wouldn't it be cool if you did this? But there are a fair number of blind people, and their ability, their baseline interaction with computers.
All right,
is
listen.
so
This is why voice interfaces suck, right? Have you ever used a command line like DOS?
Yeah, but let's
Now,
okay,
a voice interface is that, but you can't backspace.
Yeah.
That's why you get frustrated every time you have to talk to a robot on the phone, because that's what that is. You're using DOS without a backspace key.
And then you
That's
start talking
all voice
over or
prompting.
at the same time, and it's waiting. It has a certain amount of time before it's. But there got to be ways
I
to
literally press
recognize that the computer and human are having communication issues, and so what it's going to do is default back to a menu of.
Yes, please let me press a fucking button. Don't try to interpret.
And you and
my
I are just
fucking
trying to
speech.
spitball and work this out. But if you actually locked 3 competent engineers in a room, this is something they could figure out in a week.
No, command lines are shitty unless you're good at them.
You plug
I mean,
something
DOS
into the
is always
USB port to give you 5 buttons, and then you maybe someone has to help you set up those 5 buttons. But from there, you should be one should be able to interact with the computer without having to stare into something that's flashing light into your optical cortexes that could be used for staring at the eclipse tomorrow.
Who is in the Cups area? I'm in
Excuse me.
Dallas.
That was party foul.
What? I'm sorry. I
Who's
didn't hear
in the
last
area
time.
of the eclipse?
I'm not.
Boston's supposed to have a 95 or 92%.
How did we go?
I'm just wrong.
But Texas is Texas in the eclipse. You're gonna see it.
Oh, I'm right in the middle.
Nice.
Like literally, we could even do it right then when it happens. I could live stream the whole thing.
I did some traveling to see the last one. It was fucking wild. Definitely a sight to behold. I'm actually kind of like, what else do I need to see, cosmic wise? Because I've seen an eclipse, I've seen the northern lights, I've seen meteor showers, I've seen all sorts of crazy
Donkey
shit.
show.
No, I'm talking about in the sky. That would be crazy to see in the sky.
You wouldn't want to be underneath looking up. No, I agree.
No. Yeah.
If you like
I was
basking in natural phenomenon, scuba diving sounds
That scares the shit out of me.
Yeah, and you got to find the right places where it's like training wheels. That's where you go and there's certain places where there's currents and you're drifting. And then there's places where it's on the backside of a geological formation. So there's this big shallow.
I've seen technology fail in all sorts of interesting, unique, creative ways.
Yeah, we should get on a submarine to the Titanic, John. Let's get into those little tiny submarines.
There's something.
Fuck that.
There's something called the buddy system, and you have 2 air regulators, and you always stay within distance unless your buddy is trying to kill you and abandons you. There's really no way to run out of air.
Stay where I can fucking breathe. That sounds great too. That's a natural phenomenon that I'm always amazed by.
The first time I was in a swimming pool doing the training, I had already done 3 weeks of this lesson, learning about scuba diving. Imagine
right here.
Imagine taking your first breath underwater, and everyone's doing it in front of you, and there's no big deal. But as far as one's knees buckling, even though you're in the shallow end, and it's your body would not let me squat my face under the water and then inhale. It's wait, no, I know that this is what I'm supposed to be doing, but and then after you take those first couple breaths, there's maybe a liberating feeling. It's a situation where you can use your logic and reasoning in a way to evaluate what seems like an unreasonable risk. as you said, like going scuba diving itself, I don't know that my adult
What
self
about
today,
snorkeling? You've ever been snorkeling?
that can be dangerous too, but yeah.
I mean, it can.
I guess it can, but
You're fine, you know, and you got the
I
big fucking
snorkel a
thing on
lot.
your head.
My
And
brother
everything.
snorkels more than I do.
What's
Like,
neat
snorkeling's
about
the way to
scuba
go.
diving is that
You
you
should
get
always
neutral-
have a snorkel in the if you live on the coast, you should always have a snorkel and some fins in the back of your car. There's like almost
Yeah, I get a
I
claustrophobic
mean,
feeling
if you live
when
somewhere
water
where the
gets in
water
the
isn't full
snorkel.
of shit, you can just see through it.
if the water gets in your snorkel, what you do is you
No, I know,
push it
but
out
for
because you
me,
got a good
I'm saying
snorkel.
I can't
other-
relax snorkeling.
The other problem, this is what I find
gives
interesting.
me a
When
sense
you've
of
got water
claustrophobia.
in the snorkel and you can
Yeah.
hear it, and it makes that weird like predator alien.
Yeah, no,
You know what I
for
love
me,
about
That's
snorkeling,
scary.
though?
I
It's
like
you
it.
see the shit that grabs your foot on the bottom. It's like, all right, cool. It's like less scary now.
In Croatia last summer, my brother and I went, and there was a diving spot, and people kept jumping off this diving spot. It was like a 40, 50-foot jump, I think. Maybe it was like 30, but still it was a lot. So my brother and I did it. But, you know, when we were done, and afterwards I'm like, whoa, like fall in the water. Everyone who's doing this, most of these guys drop something. So my brother does it, and he takes his snorkel and his fins. He goes down to the bottom of the water below it, which is another like 40, 100 feet or something like that. It's pretty far, like 80 feet. My brother's pretty good at diving. And he comes back with like 100 euros, some jewelry, an Apple Watch, and a GoPro. And I was like, well, there you go. That was worth it. So I feel like snorkeling is always important because
Yeah, I was the kid who would run away at sleepaway camp when it was lake time because I just did not like the idea of something swimming by my legs that I couldn't see. I was a
yeah, you know
decent
what?
swimmer.
Okay. So weird enough, and I'm in the ocean, no problems ever. I mean, I have no concerns. Like if there's sharks in the water,
You're
fine.
walking
There's
on
other
sand,
things in the
there's
water
things
for
living in
sharks
it.
to be interested in. But whatever it is, like I'd be in Argentina or I'd be in Minnesota, and I'd be like in one of these giant lakes. It's just there's nothing else in that lake. There's nothing else in that lake, but you're thinking to yourself, well, what if there was just something else in that lake? Because they basically then it would just be me in that thing.
No,
And so for whatever
I
reason,
went to
being
this
alone
fucking-
in a
there's
lake
Lake
placid is
Connecticut.
scarier than the
There's a
ocean.
lake in Connecticut, and it's an artificial lake. There's literally not even any fucking fish in this thing. And
Yeah,
they're
but
like,
that
oh,
could
it's
be
fine, it's fine, it's fine. I go
Connecticut,
fucking
lost
swimming in,
New
and I
English
come up
white
with
people,
fucking 6
probably
leeches on my goddamn
reptilian.
arm.
Yeah, exactly.
Lizard people in Connecticut probably build portals in the bottom of their pool.
Well, it's a full length wetsuit because you can buy a shorty, but there's something.
No, I
there's
was in a bathing suit.
No,
I
no.
got a
but
summer
when
suit.
you're scuba diving, it's not
Oh.
armor, but as far as keeping things, because you can't see all the way around you, your vision is confined to here, which at night is even more terrifying. But so when I was like I said, did not like swimming, did not like lakes, did not like the ocean, and so when I signed up for a scuba
prefer
diving
the
trip with
ocean.
my buddies at like 15, they had already like done it, and my parents were like, Steph, you're going to be miserable. How do you know you're going to be able to overcome your fear? And this was part of my like coming of age and like proving to myself I could do it. And sure enough, the first day we get down there, there's like jellyfish breeding season. It was the only day that when we went diving, there was just thousands of these moon jellies, and it would tingle and like sting a little bit in the joints where.
Weird.
I didn't
Those
have
are
at that point. I was
people
like,
don't
no,
live
this
on
is
the
my
coast.
chance. And
I went
totally let
cliff
go
diving once, and like
of
it
all
was
the
maybe like
feel.
a 40-foot drop, and like the guys I was with didn't tell me to fucking keep my legs together, so I
Oh,
only did it
no.
once because it really hurt my fucking nuts.
It's
like
called the
Jesus
atomic
Christ,
wedgie,
it was
right?
like
You're
like
like you have
degrade
to still. Some people lose them
Mhm.
that way in a parachute accident if you're not really like careful. It's weird that they don't tell people more to be careful about that. Because a
Wow,
strap,
I don't
like if the
parachute.
strap's in just the wrong place and you got, it's a hot day.
sounds like you should just wear a jock strap for that shit.
I mean, I don't
Or
think it's
not-
gonna help
or
enough
not.
either. Really, they need to like redesign the parachute strap.
So here,
The
as
way it
far as,
works,
like,
it's supposed to be
aging
on either
science-
side of your leg tightened, and if it's not, if it's a little loose or something like that, you don't want it loose at all. You want it uncomfortable before you jump out.
So Sean, add 50 years to your age, and then let's say you want to lose 15 pounds of extra body mass and fat, and do
Okay.
it without doing high intensity cardio. Because what your doctor is telling you is that it's just a higher risk. And so
Oh, diet.
my
Casey
experience with
swam
scuba
with
diving-
sharks while she was
I was
pregnant.
literally nothing
months
but kidney
pregnant
beans
with
and broccoli
bottlenose
until I
dolphins.
lost the weight.
I
Well,
hope
so
that you
in-
delivered the bottlenose dolphins all right. And I mean, because like
Right.
if you're in bottlenose dolphin
If I
pregnancy,
needed to lose 15 pounds, I would literally eat nothing but kidney beans and broccoli until the weight was off, and I would drink coffee in the morning, and half and half in the coffee.
what if the only
bro,
thing available
you just
was
eat
hard
DOC and quinoa and seaweed
So
until
here-
you're
here's what I was
powerful.
gonna put weight on you.
So in traditional Chinese medicine, people will go sit in a barrel in the corner and like literally for 6
Witchcraft.
hours a day.
You're in traditional Chinese witchcraft. Traditional Western medicine is witchcraft
people
too.
think they're being tortured. People think that someone's like forcing them to be in timeout in this, but
Probably because they are.
Well, hold on. But so when you go scuba diving, even in the tropics, and the water is 80 to 85 degrees, and you're whether you're wearing a wetsuit or not, when you dive once or twice a day, not a big deal. But if you're on a liveaboard, you dive when you wake up, and then you eat breakfast, and then you dive again, and then you eat a snack, and then
Doesn't that fuck with your nitrogen concentration?
Well, so they keep part of the first step of scuba diving is taking classes where you learn a chart, and the people on the backside of the boat keep their own version of your charts. You check in and check out. It's called bottom time. It depends on how deep you go.
This sounds like a lot of fucking medicine for recreational activity.
Well, it's called being like a prosumer. Some people buy their own equipment. It was a time where digital camera rigs were kind of new. Still,
I was watching these cave diving videos on YouTube, and they kept every single one of them involved somebody fucking dying. And every time I was watching it, they were going in, and it was like, oh, the mission, the this, the that. And I'm like, what the fuck? The mission is literally for them to put a fucking sign deeper than anyone's ever put a fucking sign. And the sign literally says, you're going to fucking die. Get out of here. And I'm just like watching. It's like, why the fuck do these people do this? Like,
what else can you do with your life? Lick stamps?
The only thing I could think is like the fucking government is contracting them to like hide a fucking nuke somewhere. And the fucking cover story is that they're fucking doing this recreationally. Like, because I cannot fucking imagine doing that shit for fun. I'm sorry. That shit sounds
there
fucking
was
horrible.
experiments where, because when you have bubbles coming out of your mouth, the sea
spelunking.
creatures react to you differently. So they had free divers go down to depth and then in a bathing suit or even naked go swim up to where there was like a giant octopus. And the octopus learned to signal to the humans on its forehead because it was like, and there's some amazing videos. Who knows if they're CGI? But again, so the premise here, just because Andreas does real science episodes, sometimes I'll take it there in the hypothalamus, which controls your temperature regulation in your body. And people like do cold plunges, hot plunges, that sort of thing, or they do the sauna, which is how they try to burn off the energy. When in reality, when your body is cold, it activates the hypothalamus to increase your metabolism because the way that your body generates heat is to burn sugar. And so by sweating things out, you're like moving toxins through your system. So whatever that means through your pores, and you're better off peeing most of that stuff out. Keeps your prostate healthy. But when you're in the water for 4 to 5 hours a day, some of the women that were very fit in their 40s on the scuba diving trip, they would be shivering by the end of the day. And they wouldn't do the night dive because they would get chilled to the bone, because they don't have as much body mass. And so even when the water is 80 degrees, if 75 that day, you either have to choose a different wetsuit, and it doesn't feel like you're ever cold. But by doing that, and it meant you could eat whatever you want. And like I didn't realize it, but you're like, even as someone who was already pretty much in shape, just losing weight by. And so, how do you offer that as a therapeutic modality? Right now, there's a $200,000 water treadmill you can buy for your basement that like has a compartment you walk in and fills with water, and then you can like walk neck deep in water.
You could also just drink cold water because I got literally a lot faster than going into water.
I got one story I wanted to cover this episode besides the Roblox thing, which was not a story at all. Jacob Isbell, our buddy, if you guys remember Jacob Isbell, the bearded Jacob Isbell. Hold on, let me get a picture of him.
Yeah, before just the closing note on that to answer what he was saying. So air being cold is one thing, but water wicks heat away from your body a lot more efficient.
So you guys remember Jacob Isbell?
Opens up the capillaries on your skin because it's not cold. It's 85
thermal conductivity.
But so who's ever seen a weight loss technique where what you do is you get in the water for an hour 5 times a day, and within like 3 weeks, your entire metabolism has changed, regardless of what you're eating, regardless of how many weights you lift. It's just it's part of the aquatic ape theory. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. We're moving on. You gotta admit that sounds like a totally legit healing modality. The video games we're gonna create.
So Jacob Isbell, he's the Mormon guy. He got excommunicated by the church because he had
wrestling
God come down to him essentially and tell him that everything that everyone ever said about Joseph Smith's a lie and polygamy is not true.
Don't
blah,
they
blah, blah, blah.
excommunicate males just so they can maintain the like polygamy thing though?
No, that's the thing. They don't. So that's the other thing.
Yeah,
Polygamy
excommunicated
doesn't
for, like,
exist
speaking
in the
the wrong
church
way.
for the last 120 years, and yet he said it never existed at all. That Brigham Young made it up, and they're like, well, hey, even though we don't do it for the last 120 years, the fact that you're saying it's made up and that Joseph Smith never practiced it. And he's like, no, I have the conviction of like the Holy Spirit. Like I prayed this stuff down. And this is a dude who really believes in his religion.
Well, it sounds
So
like he
for
might
him to
have
be like,
one
imagine you're part of a church and the church tells you to do this stuff like fast and pray. And then you'll hear messages from God. And God tells you, yeah, by the way, all the things that they said, those didn't really happen. And now there's evidence that he's correct. So anyway, a bunch of church people wanted to like fight him literally. And they ended up having a wrestling match. And we talked about this. It was going to be a plan.
Nice. I'm glad we're checking in with this. I remember
this happened yesterday, and Jacob Hansen, who we were going to have on the show, but I don't know if we're ever gonna. But we'll see what happens with Jacob Hansen. But Jacob Isbell wrestled Jacob Hansen, and here they are in beautiful, stunning Mormon, Utah, and I want to show the beginning of this. Actually, I wanted to say I was actually really impressed with Jacob Hansen, the blonde boy. The squirrel, the flying squirrel, he comes in with some jiu-jitsu move here. Watch this happen. He comes in. He's looking at it.
No striking, right?
Boom. Now that he tried, because Jacob Isbell tried to throw him back, he used that chance to flying squirrel out, and now you've got little flying squirrel Jacob Hansen on top and around behind the boar, the bad, the boss, Jacob Isbell. But Jacob Isbell does not give up. No, and you can see it's raining, it's snowing. It is just the weather is
just stand up. Like
the weather is
the guy
confused
can't
right
weigh
now.
that much.
I mean, you'd be surprised
with a child in the foreground. If that were
this
an
guy
MMA fight,
smashed him into the fucking wall.
if that was an MMA fight, I would have her looking the other way. But a
Jacob
wrestling
Hansen's like probably slightly bigger than you, Sean, and he's also got like a lot of muscle too. Don't underestimate him.
How much do you think he weighs?
The problem is Jacob Hansen is the flying squirrel is smaller than the boar. The boar is bigger. Boar is better. And we're seeing that right now. We're seeing him throw down. But look at the flying squirrel throw his legs. I mean, he's got the jiu-jitsu move. Here's the thing.
I mean, God has to be on your side at that
point. The energy's wearing down.
If there's even 1% of you that's gay, I mean.
The energy's coming. The snow is falling. You can just feel that it's coming to a close here. And no matter what happens, look at him throw him down again. It's a second throw. This is an incredible wrestling match.
Okay, hold on.
The crowd is amazed.
Mental health alert. So you know FuzzyTube? Yeah.
Well,
FuzzyTube.
Hold on, wait. We're almost to the halfway point. So then, the thing is,
I don't want to have to, but let me just get the point out. So FuzzyTube, he was on there recently saying he had a psychotic breakdown. Jake Paul paid for his like hospital stay, which was very, very expensive. Jake wasn't going to tell everyone, but he came out but he said that what he discovered is that he was so repressed as a child and so uneducated about his own sexuality that the first memories he has of ejaculating is when he's wrestling with his cousins. He's like, again, eventually you're like at a certain age, like
there's definitely I don't want to, but I get your point, Stephanie. Anyway,
I didn't know what that meant.
You can hear the family. You can hear the families of both Jacobs right now. And the red shoes. You can see the red shoes on the ground. Someone wore red shoes in that.
5 minutes.
Probably Jacob.
Sub only, no points.
That's Jacob Hansen.
Neck pins.
Oh, and through the ring. Now there's about.
How would God feel about this if they were wearing spandex and they were women?
God loves spandex. The only problem is sometimes it causes rashes if you're allergic.
We already mentioned that he's Mormon. If you look in the chat,
we're working 2 minutes left. 2 minutes left.
Mormons and Jews are the same thing. That's what we're going to learn today.
No one gets submitted. We will have the referee make his decision of who he thinks won.
All right. Well, he's twisted him. I'm going to move a little head here, and here it is. This is what you can see coming. He's got him in the death breed.
They're obviously not trying to hurt each other.
No, they're Mormon. But he's trying to show him that
they're fucking friendly.
Well, it's like they're trying to save energy. But
final tap out. Jacob Hansen. Lines down. Jacob the beast. Jacob Isbell is the boss. Isbell is boss. That was an incredible fight, and that fight mattered.
So
because that fight was about
in a boxing match, but Jacob Isabel gets credit for his wrestling. I see.
That wasn't a fight about a fight. That was a fight about the truth. That was a question of whether or not God stood with the polygamous narrative or the non-polygamous narrative. This is the most classic way to debate something, whether the world's flat or whether the world's round. How do you decide that? Do you use science? No, you punch each other in the face.
If I had been at that event, that would have been the largest public event I've attended in the last 6-7 years, just because, for 2 or 3 years, I wasn't allowed to go to my local eateries and grab a bite and eat there because I wasn't vaccinated, and I didn't want to put them in the position of having to ask me for my vax card. And I didn't run my business because I wasn't about to be a proxy.
I just looked right
real classic Greek restaurant.
I literally just asked, "Yo, you kicking me out of this place? Yes? No? All right." So
eventually, someone invited me in, and like a month later, they actually rescinded that stuff. But it was spooky when I got invited in.
The point is,
I'm sitting there chewing my food, which I'm used to doing at home, and after. And once
I'm going to take it as a sign from God that Joe Smith didn't practice polygamy because Jacob Isbell won that wrestling match.
It seemed like a godly event. It was very wholesome. Right. They got to be outside.
But do they not practice it anymore as Mormons?
They've never really practiced it. There was a few dudes around Brigham Young who did after Joseph Smith was murdered. First presidential assassination attempts. First presidential candidate assassination was Joseph Smith. Afterwards, they move out of Illinois. They move out of Missouri. They go to Utah.
Any of them have Trump bumpers,
and they make a new religion. And that's the thing. Nobody knows until like 100 years later when they get the books and they're like, "Wait, all of this stuff is doctored and there's no evidence of it." And Joseph Smith's only married to like old women that didn't have kids with him, who were like literally William Morgan from the Morgan affair, where the Freemasons disappeared William Morgan. His wife, Lucinda Pendleton Morgan, she married Joseph Smith after the Freemason Morgan affair. There's just all these weird people, like the people they choose to be his wife don't make
straight
sense.
Men getting married,
and there's no evidence that Joseph Smith had like a harem. Right?
Wants to be exempt from military service.
Like even the people that do are the polygamists
for his rights.
All the polygamists jump to Brigham Young.
Yeah, they're the ones more into the sorcery, all that type of shit. But
why does every spiritual magical pursuit end up just being some weird way for people to get laid? Like,
would you rather marry into
magic for other things?
Western idea of sex and magic have been completely hidden from everyone in monopolized by the occult. And in any other tradition, in any other culture, sex is directly tied to your religious pursuit because you get married and have kids that you're putting into that.
What if you're the 100th wife? He can't get to all of this. So again, if you're going to marry someone into a multiple marriage, do you want to marry the guy who's shopping for his third wife or his fourth wife or his fifth wife because he's like done with the other one?
It feels like it's just having a rotation.
But once you get to 50 wives, you're just like becoming, and maybe again, it's about the banks are only able to distribute the government's resources to people that are citizens. And in order to be a citizen, you have to be married at a local church. And one of the churches said, fine, well, pretty much like, we're not going to all marry each other, but like, that might have been another solution. I just think that when things get, because there are people in the United States who got accused of having child brides when they were traveling with a child and going across enough borders with enough language changes, and that in order to make it across the border, they had to check 2 boxes on. And you know what happened at Ellis Island? Everything went in the different column. Who the hell knows? At some point you're like nodding and like, yes. By the time it gets to there, it's like these two are husband and wife. And so in order for the United States to accept them, we had to accept that there was a 35 or an 80-year-old man married to like a 7-year-old.
But why the fuck every spiritual pursuit, all of these cults and these magical secret organizations just end up being weird ways for people to go get fucked in fucking dark rooms.
Everything I said does not count. What you said is also true. Yeah. What I said is actually today I'm not yoga poser, I'm juxtaposer. I'm like, so what I said, because oftentimes in debate or in conversation, that's what people try to do. They try to pick apart what the other person's saying and then present a counter narrative by kind of juxtaposing a bunch of partial truths to try to stitch a narrative that's counter to what you're saying. Whereas what we used to do is share information and sources. I was working on this with my family. Like, remember when we were just like the Chris Farley episode? Remember when you were on the Beatles? That was cool. Remember when this happened? Yeah, that was cool. As opposed to like
be a consumer, you could be my Robin Quivers. I could be a Howard Stern. Together we'll light up the airway.
how many of you have had family members ask you if you think the election in 2020 was stolen? Anyone else?
Yeah.
My family's not that.
Somehow this is a regular question that's being asked.